Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to ARC's weekly webinar series. My name is Sam Shinbaga, and I'm the Managing Director of the Community Development Group here at the ARC. I'm very excited to hear from our panelists today, as well as the discussion that Carrie Stevens is going to be leading with our panelists today. Let me tell you a little bit about why I'm excited about today's webinar. Think about the time when you were in the office a while ago. On a Friday morning, you go get your coffee, you run into your colleagues, you have that call with your client first thing in the morning. What do you talk about? Probably what you're planning for that weekend, that new restaurant that you want to try out, that new brewery that opened in the neighborhood, the haircut or massage that you desperately need, a visit to the local farmer's market, so on and so forth. I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is that is literally what we live for. It's those experiences that are created for the most part by small businesses and local businesses. Trust me, I'm not trying to make you feel bad about all the things that you're missing out on right now. That just happens to be an unfortunate byproduct of the point I'm trying to make. For us to get back to that life that we lived and loved, we need small businesses to thrive. And our small businesses are struggling. There's just no debate about that. A lot of our small businesses are making some tough decisions between earning their livelihood and protecting their own lives on a daily basis. Right now, all of us, I know, can't wait to get out and go to our favorite restaurants, walk through our downtowns, shop at our local stores. But, some of those businesses are in real danger of not being there when we return. A pandemic disproportionately impacts small businesses, as we know. They have fewer cash reserves, they have weaker relationships with banks, they have higher costs, they have limited benefits for their employees. This is where government needs to help. Economic development agencies need to help. In fact, any organization that can help needs to. And, knowing how we respond to this hardship, in my opinion, is almost as important as understanding its impact. Now, I'll stop rambling now and get to the point I was trying to make, which is, that is why I am excited about today's panel, because that is exactly the kind of work that our panelists are doing on a day-to-day basis, and that's what they're thinking about when they show up at work. So on behalf of the ARC, I wanted to thank all of you for being here. I wanted to thank our panelists for being part of the panel today. And I wanted to thank all of those who are supporting our small businesses through their daily work. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Stevens, who is going to moderate today's panel. Take it away, Carrie.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam, and good afternoon, everyone. As Sam said, my name is Carrie Stevens, and I am a new planning administrator with the Community Development Group at the Atlanta Regional Commission. My focus will be on the comprehensive economic development strategy known as Catalyst and other planning initiatives. And as Sam said, I'll be the moderator, for today's webinar. We are very lucky to have our three speakers today to address what they're doing to assist small businesses during this difficult time. We will hear solutions and initiatives from a regional, county, and city perspective. First up, to give us a regional perspective, we have Chris Higdon. Chris serves as the Manager of Community Development for the Georgia Municipal Association. In addition, Chris serves as the Loan Manager for the Georgia Cities Foundation's Downtown Loan Programs and a Design Assistance Programs as well. Next up, we have Andrew Carnes. Andrew serves as the Vice President of Economic Development for Partnership Gwinnett. He joined Partnership Gwinnett in 2015 as the Director of Economic Development and was promoted to Senior Director of Economic Development in 2017. As the VP of Economic Development, Carnes oversees the county-wide economic development strategies, which includes business recruitment and retention, redevelopment, entrepreneurship, workforce development, as well as industry programs and events. He is a member of various economic development groups, including the Regional Marketing Alliance. From the city's perspective, we will hear from Angela Threadgill. Angela serves as the executive director, of the Decatur Development Authority and is the planning and economic director at the city of Decatur, a city of 25,000 residents and 960 businesses within 4.7 square miles. Angela is responsible for the city's current and long-range planning functions and partners with key stakeholders in the public and private sector to encourage best possible development outcomes that align with the city's adopted plans and policies. Before we get started with presentations, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have entered the webinar in listen-only mode. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface, which should be located on your computer desktop in the upper right corner. You are listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. If your internet speeds are having difficulty, click the camera drop-down menu and select a different camera option or turn off the cameras. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions in the questions pane of the control panel. We will collect these and address a few after each presenter and then during the question and answer session at the end of today's webinar. You may also see chat messages from us in that window. During the question and answer session, you will also have the opportunity to verbally ask a question. Please press the raise your hand button and we will call your name and unmute you to ask the question. If we are unable to get to all the questions in the allotted time, contact information for all presenters is located at the end of the presentation. This and all other ARC hosted webinars will be located on the ARC COVID page. Our next topic will be adapting municipal budgets in response to COVID-19, and that will be held June 2nd, which is next Tuesday, from 2:30 to 3:30. And now I would like to welcome Chris Hayden and get started with his presentation.
Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Get my screen set up here. Okay. Can someone tell me that it's working right?
Yes, it's working okay.
Perfect. Thank you. I definitely want to thank everyone for inviting me to be a part of this discussion today. It's an honor. Thank Carrie Stevens, an old friend of mine, and I will say that ARC is very lucky and she's going to be great for the region. So I'm really excited about that. As Carrie mentioned, I'm really representing two organizations here today, and I'm going to go through this presentation pretty quick. And of course, Carrie will be able to supply it to everyone to go through again later. I was a little over time when I did my run through earlier. But Georgia Municipal Association, most people participating here today are probably familiar with GMA. We're the membership organization for Georgia's cities. People may be less familiar with Georgia Cities Foundation. We celebrated our 20th year of the foundation last year. It was originally created as a subsidiary 501c3. It's now a separate 501c3 managed under contract by GMA. And about 8 or 9 years ago, it was designated as a CDFI by the U.S. Department of Treasury. So just very briefly what GMA does, just so you have a perspective of who I'm representing today. We do state and federal advocacy for cities in Georgia, provide employee benefits, blank life, and health insurance, retirement, et cetera, provide risk management services, purchasing and financing services, We're the municipal training agency for cities in Georgia, along with UGA, and we're one of the founding partners with the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing. And we've just created a new 501c3. I just wanted to very briefly mention. This was created prior to COVID-19, but I think it's important to mention as a resource going forward for cities in Georgia. It's called Georgia City Solutions. It will be maintained as a subsidiary nonprofit within GMA. And the primary focus areas will be leadership development, workforce and economic development, quality of life initiatives, and research and innovation. There's the web link listed here if you want to look into that further. We're in the process of propping up our board for this right now, but things got slowed down a bit with COVID. Just wanted to provide a brief update of how, big picture, some of the ways that GMA is handling this crisis. So we're continuing to provide a consolidated resource for information to our members. I have a screenshot of that later, but GMA has a very good COVID-19 resource page that everyone should check out. We continue to lobby in DC and at the Georgia Capitol to meet the needs of our cities. We continue to provide existing programs and education opportunities for our cities. And our annual convention, like so many people, organizations now, is moving to a virtual event. It will take place in late June and will last 4 days as usual. It will be virtual. Just a very brief update or overview of Georgia City's Foundation resources. For most of our existence, we've managed a downtown revolving loan fund. We created, within the last decade, the Georgia Downtown Renaissance Partnership, which is a technical assistance and design assistance program for cities focused on downtowns. The two main areas that I will highlight are the Renaissance Strategic Visioning and Planning, or RSVP program, which is similar to the LCI program through ARC. And then the Downtown Renaissance Fellows Program, which is primarily in the summertime. It is essentially a supervised, design-focused summer internship with the University of Georgia's College of Environment and Design. We provide 2 full-day trainings at different times of the year around the state called the Heart and Soul Downtown Workshop, to highlight successful downtowns and economic development programs. Georgia Placemaking Collaborative is become really, I would say, our marquee program. It's the culmination of all the work we've been doing over the last 2 decades. It's a three-year program modeled similarly after GIC. Again, I'd be happy to go over all this in more detail with anyone that's interested. And we've been working on virtual resources, which we will continue to retool during this crisis, including our development sessions, which are largely teaching cities and development authorities how to think like developers. The Downtown Development Authorities as Developers webinar series, which is focused on highlighting effective ways where DDAs have served as developers themselves as opposed to just conduits for development. And we're in the process of creating a downtown resource guide online. It will be a comprehensive resource for all things downtown development in Georgia once that's completed. Some updates from the foundation. Our revolving loan fund has seen so far approximately 20% of our loan portfolio have requested loan deferments or interest-only payments. We would honestly expect that to increase, and those deferments will probably go longer than we had initially planned, but we are trying to assist our borrowers wherever possible in that area. We still do have interest in our loan program, more interest than I probably would have guessed. However, our revolving loan fund is very low on funds. We've seen significant interest in the last few years, and understanding the nature of a revolving loan fund, we need the loan repayments to come in to make future loans, and it's been going out faster than it's been coming in. We're going to continue to work on our design and technical assistance programs I mentioned, and we will probably be shifting the scheduling of our placemaking retreats and potentially move to some virtual retreats during this crisis to accommodate the needs of our participant communities. A time for innovation. I wrote an article in GMA's magazine that will come out very soon, titled "A Time for Innovation," and I wanted to highlight some of the businesses and city programs that I included in that article. Felt that was relevant to today's panel. It has been a time where small businesses have had to be incredibly innovative in order to survive. These are just some of the examples that I mentioned in the article. Restaurant as a general store. Everybody here, likely being from the Atlanta metro area, has probably seen this, although I have seen examples in rural parts of the state as well, where restaurants have been able to supply people in their community with items that are otherwise hard to find in the grocery store, utilizing the restaurant supply chain. Here are two that are near me personally, Sun in My Belly in Kirkwood, and Salaryman in right at the junction of East Lake, Kirkwood, and Oakhurst. Salaryman also is an example I've seen these all over the state of giving their patrons the opportunity to purchase meals for medical workers or people in need. And that is a way for us as consumers to help people that are dealing with this crisis on the front lines or were already in need prior to COVID. And it also is a way to help the restaurant. Some examples of innovative retail, virtual and appointment retail. Have seen several businesses that provide online appointments where you can schedule a time to go in a limited capacity to shop indoors. And there's also ways to do it virtually. One of the examples here, the one on top, is Reeves Gifts and Jewelry in Bainbridge, Georgia. They have been providing regular virtual sales where using Facebook Live, and you can comment during the sale and add that you want to purchase an item, and they'll even deliver it to you locally. Troops Gifts and More is a downtown business in Decatur, Georgia. It's also a Hallmark franchise, and they will get on the phone, FaceTime, walk around the store, and virtually walk you around the store and help you select items, gift cards, or things of that nature. Another innovative practice. This is one of my favorites. I need to be careful how I say it. It's a company called Show Pony in downtown Augusta. They have a campaign called #WeGiveAShirt. And they work with companies not just around Augusta or the state, but all over the country. And they launch short-term T-shirt campaigns. Actually, I have one from Salaryman that I purchased as a way to help raise money for small businesses. They're great-looking shirts, very innovative approach. And as you can see, when I took the screenshot, they had raised over $138,000 for local businesses impacted by the pandemic. Movie theaters, obviously something that was hit very hard. Cine Art House Theater in Athens, I have highlighted above. They had to close their doors almost immediately during this crisis, and they offer paid streaming of their releases on their website as a way to keep some revenue coming in. and Plaza Theater. Many of you are probably familiar with the old Art Deco Plaza Theater on Ponce de Leon, and they have started a pop-up drive-in theater, which I think is just a fantastic idea, and I think it's something that others could do around the city or around the region or around the state. Some other organizations that have done some great things to support small businesses. I've seen several school systems that have done this, but this one was particularly strong. The Morgan County School System, using PTO dollars, purchased $10,000 in downtown Madison bucks for Madison, Georgia, for teacher gifts, which is a great way to show appreciation to the teachers and support small businesses. A non-event event, this is a really creative idea from the Monroe Downtown Development Authority. They had to cancel a lot of their outdoor activities for the spring and summer, and they did a limited edition t-shirt for the canceled events. So you can buy a t-shirt for the events that you can't go to. And they use that as one of the many ways they've raised money for local grant funding. The Toccoa Chamber of Commerce did a similar t-shirt campaign where they sold t-shirts, and if you purchased one, you get to select a local business where the proceeds of the t-shirt sale would go to, and they raised over $5,000 for over 60 small businesses in the Toccoa area. And then Monroe Downtown Development Authority operates their farmers market, and they've gone entirely virtual with curbside pickups. So that was a great way to keep the local farmers market going as well. Carrie wanted me to mention I'm involved in a regular Friday phone call that's been going for about a month and a half now with folks involved in economic development around the state, the small group. And we still don't have a name. But one of the things, a few of the takeaways I wanted to mention here, local governments do have a desire to assist small businesses and a strong need. However, they do need to balance that with their own plans for their own revenue shortfall, which is almost certainly guaranteed to happen for local governments. Grants and loans are one example. I've mentioned some grants. I'm not going to talk about loans because Angela's going to talk about that in a bit. I can send these resources to Carrie, and she can share them with everyone, but Duluth is working on a downtown parking plan and already has signage involved to help streamline the curbside pickup and other safe shopping activities in their downtown area. Augusta is revised their outdoor dining ordinance, and I could see it becoming a good model ordinance for changes you can make to accommodate safer alternatives for dining in restaurants. The one thing cities can do, and I have seen some good examples in metro and rural, of providing technical assistance and or grants to assist small businesses to gain better online presence. And also one of the things that I've heard a lot is just the one thing that cities and authorities and other organizations can do is just to help distill the vast amount of information to the small business community, because they've got a full-time job already trying to stay alive. There's information overload right now, so the more that we can do to distill the information down to something manageable will help them tremendously. And one person on the call mentioned the reality. Our jobs have been for years in economic development, downtown development, is to drive as many people as possible into a downtown or a retail area, and that's been turned on its head right now. A few recommended resources I wanted to mention before I turn this back over is this is the GMA's COVID-19 resource page I mentioned. Reopen Main Street is one of the best on-site collections of resources that I've found. I definitely, and it's growing organically. It's got great information that everybody should should utilize. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, many of you probably already know this, but out of the gate, they became one of the best resources for the SBA programs. They continue to provide great resources for small businesses. That's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. This has been a really fun group that I wanted to mention. There was an organization that a group of folks, primarily in place branding and some other economic development professionals, that started the group on Facebook called Downtown Happy Hour. And then they put together a 3-day virtual unconference, they call it, last week. I have to say it's one of the most entertaining conferences I've been to in a long time. Of course, I didn't leave to go to it. It was very fun. They did a great job, and you can join their group and view all the recorded sessions on Facebook. And they've also, just last week, changed, I guess, their brand from Downtown Happy Hour to a place to an organization called Proud Places. So this is their website. So, and they will continue to put great and fun content out there. So I highly recommend that as well. And that's the end of my presentation. There's my contact information. And Carrie, I believe we're opening this up for questions.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Chris. That was a lot of great information. I do have one question for you,
okay.
Which will kind of show that I think the continuity of your organization and what's been happening. And as you outlined in your presentation, you've been speaking with communities all over the place and really working with them. What have you seen as the dialogue changing over time from what people were talking about at the beginning and kind of what they're talking about now as far as when, how they're going to reopen?
Well, it does vary around the state, of course, and it has been a challenge for local government officials to have to make the kind of decisions that they've essentially been asked to make. I think that without getting too deep into a political answer, the reality is setting in that this is going to be an ongoing issue, and I think that more and more local governments and authorities and other organizations are going to have to continue to find ways to help directly, whether that's with grants or loans, or indirectly with streamlining activities for small businesses, revisiting ordinances, and revisiting fees, anything that they can do to help small business. I'm not sure if that answered the question or not, but it was an attempt.
Yes, no, thank you so much. Thanks so much. And we'll probably have some more questions for you at the end, but I think we'll now turn it over to Andrew. Thank you so much, Chris.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much, Carrie. I appreciate it. I'm going to see if I can go ahead and throw my screen up here and see if you guys can see this really, really quick. All right, it looks like it's showing me, which I'll be more than happy to just go ahead and start talking, but it's I'm trying to throw up my PowerPoint presentation.
All right. Oops, no, wrong person. All right, Andrew, you should have, yep, we see it.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks, Carrie. I want to thank you and the ARC for allowing me to kind of come on a little bit, talk a little bit about what we are doing here and kind of what we are seeing and hearing and all the ins and the outs. So where Chris is a more regional organization, I could argue that we are regional as well, just because Gwinnett County is so so large. But Partnership Gwinnett, so just to introduce myself, I'm Andrew Carnes. I'm the Vice President of Economic Development here at Partnership Gwinnett. Partnership Gwinnett is the economic marketing arm for Gwinnett County, as well as all 16 cities. And so really, what does that mean? Our job is to wake up every single day to recruit new companies in, help out the existing companies that are here, but also talent development, working with our Atlanta, our technical schools, our career academies, and our universities, to making sure that they have the tools and the resources for our next generation of employees. And then last but not least is what we deal with on a daily basis is redevelopment, talking about making sure that we have the resources here for companies that are looking to grow and expand. And so so jumping really right into our presentation, or frankly, my presentation is and it is not letting me go to the next. And I apologize, because I've never actually done I've done a lot of Zoom, but I've never done one here. So Carrie, can you change my slides or not?
Hey, Andrew, it's Jared. I would just try to tab into the partner, like your PowerPoint slide, and then advance it from there and minimize the GoToWebinar tab.
Okay. There we go. Perfect. All right. So just kind of as a roadmap, just kind of bringing it up and letting everybody see it. Kind of as the roadmap is Gwinnett. We came out as the stay-at-home order on March 27th, and then obviously you have the state and so forth there. But one thing that I did want to talk a little bit about is kind of how we responded. Frankly, it was all hands on deck. We actually opened up a 24/7 call center. I remember that we even received calls from CEOs across seas, our CEOs here, but at 1:30 in the morning, and essentially what they were trying to figure out is they're trying to figure out what essential business is. And I think that was one of the things that we were all trying to figure out as these ordinance came out is what is designated as essential business, and why the designation, and that sort of thing. And so immediately what we did is we started creating our back to work plan, because our goal and our job and what we heard from companies that we are working with is they want to get back as sooner than later. And I think that goes for all of us, is that we want to make sure that we're adhering by the CDC guidelines, the 6 feet apart, wearing the mask in the common areas, and that sort of thing, but making sure that our employees, most importantly, feel safe to come back to work, and whenever we have the opportunity to come back to work. And so we came back to work 4 weeks ago. We came back on May 4th, and it has been a phenomenal experience. Our goal here at PG is to make the links and the connections in between our companies, but it's exactly what Chris was talking about a second ago. It was data overload for the longest time for the PPP funding and how to get that, and really why that's important. But also, it's we want to make sure that we're kind of honing in a little bit of kind of our role and how we can help in this big in this pandemic. And so working obviously with the chamber, but we established the 24/7 call center and established our policies and procedures. And I'll be more than happy to share that with everybody on this call, to making sure that they can use, you can use that as an example. We've had a number of companies that have utilized that as an example. And so obviously we're all in this together. And so I want to make sure that we are sharing that across the board, so you can take a little bit from hopefully what we are doing, and maybe what some other communities are doing, and kind of put together your own back to work plan. But I can say a couple of the big things that we've done is in economic development, our goal and our job is to eliminate risk at the end of the day. And so thinking through every bit of what makes sense. And so thinking about as your team and as your staff are showing up, but also as your companies are starting to get back into the groove and that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, thinking of the little stuff, little things go a long ways, especially with your team. And whenever I say that, I mean, we have companies that are taking our plan and using that as an example. And so thinking about something little, just like the pin holders. Whenever we have our staff they came back to work, like I mentioned, on the 4th, we did a daily temperature check, and then they signed a document. And I say a document, it's a little bitty piece of paper that basically says you have not knowingly been around any one of your family members that have been exposed. And so we had 2 different pin holders, of a clean and a used. And so thinking through that from the beginning to the end is really crucial to the team coming back to work and that sort of thing. And so one of the, and this is one of my favorite pictures, is obviously Jordan McIntosh, who is our in charge of workforce development with Adam Ferrand. This was his first week back. He was like, I think a lot of us, really stoked to get back into the office, even though we're adhering by the 6 feet rule and wearing the mask and doing all the things that we need to protect ourselves. He was set up in one of our conference rooms and just kind of moved his whole workspace into that extra conference room, and just kind of made himself at home, which is awesome. We were able to continue to collaborate and have the elevator, for better term, the elevator conversation or in the hallway conversation. But the good part about it is we're starting to see that with companies, and we're starting to hear that companies are happy and they're getting back to work. But a couple of success stories that I do want to share. So Beaver Paper is a paper manufacturer here in Gwinnett County. What they did is they worked with their suppliers, and they kind of retooled and started making masks. And these masks were provided to Gwinnett cities across the board, whether they were getting 600 or where they were getting 10, depending on the size of the city and the need and that kind of stuff. And so they started making masks for our municipalities, which is super cool. They didn't have to, our municipalities didn't have to pay for it. And one of the things that I figured out in this whole pandemic was how flexible our existing companies and how crucial it is to have the relationships here. And so Beaver Paper decided to reach out to us because we helped them out with an expansion. They said, hey, we're making these masks, but we don't know what to do with them. And so we made a connection, and hopefully you'll see the announcements coming out sooner than later in regards to that. Another one that I want to talk about is YSS. So YSS, they do a number of things in regards to uniforms, and they have about 300 people sewing operation, and they flipped it overnight, and they started making PPE for our local hospitals and that kind of stuff. And so, which I think is really cool, and it just shows once again the flexibility of our existing industry and that kind of stuff. So next, I want to talk a little bit about our programming. We are an economic development organization, and you can see we did 8 webinars on there, and those are strategic webinars that we did around real estate and funding and that sort of thing, where obviously partnering with the mothership and the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce. I mean, with the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce, they're doing over 75 different events, and they've had over 2,000 members or just people in general sign up for their webinars, and it's very educational and that sort of thing. We're Partnership Gwinnett. We're focused on making sure that we're providing one-on-one content to our existing companies, doing our existing industry visits. One of the things that has been awesome through this whole pandemic is checking in on our existing companies. I mean, we've done over 155 different existing industry visits virtually, which has been great. CEOs and C-suite of companies, they're not necessarily thinking tactically within the next 7 to 10 business days. They're thinking more strategically now. How to mitigate risk and why to mitigate risk and that sort of thing. And so it's great to start having those conversations and continuing to have those conversations. But we've actually seen an uptick in a lot of the phone calls that we've had from our companies and talking about expansion plans and how to do those expansions within these interesting times and that sort of thing. The last thing that I will talk about is obviously we're rolling out a couple of different things, but I want to challenge all of us. Obviously, in 2008 and 2009, the economy was hit fairly hard, and it really boils down to just going back to the basics. We have companies out there that are growing and that are expanding, and we have to making sure that we communicate with those companies and talking about why it makes sense to grow and expand and continue to grow and expand. And they're telling us that on a daily basis. But we also have a number of Gwinnetians and just people around the metro area that are looking for jobs. And so going back to the basics and linking up the gap in between people that are looking for jobs and companies that have those jobs. And so we've established a job board that we are uploading a lot of the companies that we are working with and making sure that they are targeted towards our 5 targeted industries, in which is IT solutions, healthcare science, regional corporate headquarters, and the manufacturer supply chain, and making sure that we are working with those type of companies in our community that have retooled and restructured. And then also some of our companies have grown another vertical. They have figured out that this is a need, and this is going to be a need for a long period of time, and so they're starting to utilize the tools and the resources that they have already established, like YSS has done within their sewing operations. They've actually added an additional shift, so they can continue to make the PPE products, but also so they can make the mass products. So anyways, it's a very interesting time. The one thing that I will say is this is not a cookie cutter, and the response is not cookie cutter. I wish I could say it was, but this is something that none of us have ever been through. So something to kind of keep in mind is something that I continue, and the leadership team here continues to have in the back of their mind, is overdo it. If you think that you are being, you're pulling out all the stops to be safe and making sure that you're relaying that information to our companies, and that's exactly what I'm telling companies, just overdo it, making sure that you're thinking about, making sure that your staff is not touching door handles whenever they're walking through. If they're going to the second floor, opening up those doors and making sure that you can utilize a stairwell. And if they can't utilize a stairwell, then making sure that you have a policy and procedure in place for utilizing the elevator one person at a time and that sort of thing. So just I would like to challenge all of us to think that this is not cookie cutter, but I have heard from a number of companies that are ready to get back to work and open back up. And so I'll stop there. This is my contact information. If you have any questions, thoughts, feelings, or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. So Carrie, I'll flip it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That was some great information. I do have one just follow-up question for you. I know you had been speaking a lot about how much you've been coordinating with the different businesses, but I know Gwinnett has really been trying to coordinate between governments and other organizations. What type of coordination have you been doing with, either Gwinnett County, other governments, local governments about reopening procedures and maybe best practices?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that we've done is we've established an economic development coalition, and it's a coalition of just the economic developers within all 16 cities, as well as Gwinnett County, on this coalition. And the goal for that is exactly what Chris was talking about a second ago. Is we have a number of, just like Duluth with the parking plan, and and we have another city that is kind of delaying the occupational tax, and so we have a number of different incentives out there that our cities are able to do, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more in a second, but our cities are doing on the local level and that kind of stuff. And so just making sure that we are communicating as a community as a whole. And so the Economic Development Coalition has been established and has been implemented over the past number of months.
Great, thank you, Andrew. And now I think we're going to transition over to Angela. I'm going to get her slide presentation up. And I'm going to show the screen. So if everyone can see her screen.
Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. I am Angela Threadgill, and I'm the Planning and Economic Development Director for the City of Decatur. And what is a webinar without a small technology glitch? So today is my day and I am unable to share my webcam, but nonetheless, I am happy to be here with you all to share some of the initiatives that the city of Decatur is doing. Just a little bit about me. I've been in the planning field for 16 years in local government and 5 years with the city of Decatur. And more recently, my duties have expanded to include economic development and staffing the Decatur Development Authorities. And on the next slide, I have some information about the city of Decatur relevant to today's discussions. Our estimated population is around 25,000 in 4.7 square miles. And when we look at our trade area, that population grows roughly 4 to 5 times that amount. We have 960 businesses within the city of Decatur. If you include the law and doctor's offices, it grows to 1,500. But of those, 95 are food and beverage establishments, including our full service restaurants, brew pubs, and coffee shops, bakeries, all the yummy food establishments. And then we have 75 retail establishments, the clothing, jewelry, gift shops, and then we also have 85 service establishments that are the hair and nail salons, automotive services, barber shops, dry cleaners. But it is this mix of businesses that help create a unique sense of place in Decatur. It helps create a high quality of life. And it is the very reasons why it is so important for the city to find ways to support its businesses during COVID-19. On the next slide, for this webinar, I want to highlight several initiatives implemented by the city of Decatur since the state of emergency and shelter-in-place orders took effect. And I'll use we a lot, and it's because we had 20 staff across different departments that helped in these different initiatives, and I'm incredibly proud to be able to share all their hard work that has spanned 9 short weeks. And so the first thing that we implemented in early April was an interactive map. And if we can go to the next slide, this is a map that has a listing of businesses, many of which closed their doors to the public, but were still operational, maybe as a virtual online experience, or they had transitioned to a delivery, curbside, or to-go operation. And so a staff team conducted the research. They were using the business websites, the social media sites, and on occasion would call the business owners. And then we would plug that information into this GIS map template that we downloaded from Esri, so any community can do this. And then the map can be branded and customized. And so one thing that we did to help with navigation was to create tabs across the top, restaurants, retail, the grocers, personal services, automotive services, but then there's also a map with map points that indicate the location of the businesses. And on the left-hand side, there is a scroll bar listing all of the businesses. And so on the next slide, you will see whether a user is clicking in the map or on that sidebar. What will happen is a display will pop up with the business information, including a link to their website, as well as a link if they have online gift cards for sale. So this has been really helpful, and I've provided the bit.ly link. So after the webinar, I encourage you to go check this out. But the great thing about this map is that this will become a permanent feature on the city's economic development webpage and continue to support the businesses after we come out on the other side of this pandemic. So a lot of effort went into this. We launched it on April 2nd, and concurrently, as we launched this interactive map, On the next slide we launched our marketing campaign with the use of social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And the purpose was not only to bring attention to those featured businesses within each of those posts, but also drive attention back to that interactive map through the links. And so we knew we created something really useful when the map had over 1,500 interactions in a matter of 5 days. And we noticed in the Instagram analytics that users were saving the post to their favorites so that they could return back later. And so we did 8 unique posts over 6 weeks. And if you go to Visit Decatur GA on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, you can see all those fun, unique posts. So this was so helpful. And, some of them were thematic. Others, for that first one, the restaurants were featured. Another one was for our market. We did a post for our fitness gyms that had online fitness classes. So this was fun to highlight our businesses. On the next slide, I wanted to show the supportive messaging. So Decatur, continues to be an active community with many residents getting out and bicycling and jogging and walking the dog through our commercial district. And so rather than seeing, blank storefronts or shuttered storefronts, we definitely wanted to bring supportive and positive messaging with the use of vinyl graphics and banners throughout our downtown. And so using the research, we had a staff team create and distribute these different vinyl graphics. They just cling right onto the storefront windows. And so we were able to post whether a business was open, if they had takeout, if they had an online presence, or if they were temporarily closed, that we would see those customers very soon. But just bringing attention to the fact that despite COVID-19, that Decatur businesses were still open, and having our residents think local and shop local and support local. Another initiative that I think is really important to highlight is on the next slide, and this is promotion through partnerships with different area organizations, and I'll highlight 3 of those. The first, Decatur Arts Alliance. Arts and culture is a major part of Decatur's identity, and the Arts Alliance held one of the first virtual events that promoted area restaurants and 3 Taverns Brewery, while also promoting to support the artist community with their virtual comedy night. And then with the Lantern Parade in place, we have a local art studio, learning studio, that created lantern kits and sold them in the local markets. And so this was just a great way to cross-promote both the artist community as well as our business community. The next, with Decatur Business Association, they have hosted a number of virtual shopping events. And what makes this extra fun is that they invited mixologists from some of our local restaurants to teach us how to craft a great cocktail at home, and then took us virtually around to the different shops, and we could shop virtually. And I think Chris had pointed out another example in this state. The next is the Decatur Tourism Bureau. We are so thankful that they were able to host our marketing campaign. And then also they promoted the local businesses to the hotels and their guests. We have a number of guests that are here. They're housed here in Decatur, but they are helping Metro Atlanta, businesses and other locations recover from COVID-19. And so, they are here for, many more weeks, and to make them, feel more like at home, we are helping them find local restaurants and, just virtual experiences to make their stay a little bit better while they are away from home. The Tourism Bureau brought gift bags and then special holiday meals for the guests as well. And so this is just another way to promote businesses and, with the gift bags and the meals, also supporting our local businesses directly. And then last but not least, on the last slide that I have is about the Decatur Emergency Small Business Loan Program. Now, the research for the loan program started in March, and a lot of the inspiration came from Birmingham, Alabama, Athens, Georgia, and Carborough, North Carolina, who all had similar loan programs. And this is a partnership between the City of Decatur, the Decatur Development Authorities, and Legacy Decatur, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And this partnership and the program is defined through a memorandum of understanding that was approved in April. And the research looked at partnering with, a local bank or a CDFI, a community development financial institution, but ultimately the decision was made to use the infrastructure that we already have in place and the powers that are already given to the development authorities to administer the loan programs, that are in support of economic and workforce development, which is, what this particular loan program does. So the DDA is administering the loan program. There is a 5-member oversight committee, and those 5 members were appointed. One was appointed by the City Commission, one was appointed by Legacy Decatur, and then 3 were appointed by the development authorities. And these 5 members have a background in real estate development, banking and loan services, small business. So there's a great wealth of knowledge there. And so they are presently reviewing the application. So as you can see in that graphic, we did have an online application that started on May 5th, and then 11 days later closed on May 15th. There was a great response during that time period, and the Oversight Committee is presently reviewing those applications. Some of the minimum eligibility requirements of the loan program is that it needed to be a Decatur-based business. The business needed to be open and in operation as of March 1st of this year. The business needed to be in good standing. So all business license should be active, any taxes, fees paid and current. In terms of the number of employees, we ask that business have at least 2 full-time or full-time equivalent employees, and then a maximum of 30 FTE as of March 1st. The loan amount the business could ask up to $5,000 per FTE, with a maximum of $25,000 as the loan amount. The terms of the loan, it's a 0% interest loan program. The length of the loan is up to 4 years, and there is a deferred payback beginning 12 months after the state of emergency has been lifted. There is no prepayment penalty. So this really was trying to be a bridge to help businesses. There was no penalty, or a business wasn't precluded if they had already received financial assistance elsewhere, like in the PPP or an EIDL, or even lease arrangements. It did not preclude them. So this was additional help for our local businesses. So we had a number of communications leading up to and during the application period We had a loan guide to assist businesses in gathering the documentation to complete the application, information about payroll, if there was, a balance sheet or income statement, a statement of hardship. These are just some of the requirements that we wanted to see as part of their loan application. And as I mentioned, the Oversight Committee is, we'll be making a determination here in a couple of days as to whether or not a lottery is going to be necessary. We had a great response, as I had mentioned, and so with the funds, we started with $500,000, $400,000 coming from the city of Decatur, $100,000 coming from the Decatur Development Authorities, and then with the Legacy Decatur, they have been accepting charitable donations, and as of last week, they have collected over $30,000 to contribute to the small business loan program. But there may need to be a lottery process, and again, that determination is going to be made in the next couple of days, as we might be oversubscribed for the loan amounts. And so the goal is to disperse those funds to the businesses hopefully at the beginning of June. So we're very close to dispersing those funds. And so I think that concludes my section, but I'm available for questions, or you can reach out to me directly. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Angela. Jared, if you could put it on the last question slide. We're getting close to the end of our time, but I do have one question for Angela and then one question for the group. If you can go to the last question slide, Jared. If we can get to the last question slide. There we go. So the one question for Angela, that was some great information, and I'm sure all the communities will really appreciate all that you're doing, and I'm sure they'll reach out to you. But basically, the question that we had was, are you thinking of closing off any streets or parking for expanded restaurant use as a result of social distancing and other CDC regulations?
We are currently exploring that as an opportunity for our restaurants. I mean, we do have a very large Decatur square, and so we are presently looking at that. One of the challenges is making sure that those patrons that come use the square do maintain a physical distancing, but then also those tables and chairs, how do we manage those? How do we make sure that they are clean for the next patron? So we haven't completely written it off, but we are certainly exploring how to make it safe. Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's looking into all types of things. And this is a follow-up question for all three panelists. In addition to all the creative resources that you all have brought up during this presentation, are any of the cities and counties that you're working with, or the city that you are, looking into making any regulatory changes to help local businesses? Or know of any organizational changes that are going to be made?
Well, Carrie, early on with the city of Decatur, many of our businesses were requesting, a way to be able to sell alcohol in enclosed containers alongside those pickup and to-go orders. And so there was a modification made to our, our ordinances to allow that temporarily. So that is one thing that did change very early on in March.
And I know that is.
I know there's been a lot of discussion on that, Carrie. I think, one of the things you hear everybody talking about are to-go margaritas or whatever it is being very popular right now. And I think it will call into question a lot of current regulations. I know some cities around the state that have entertainment zones or whatever you may want to call them that are coming up with some creative ways to work within that existing ordinance to provide more outlets for restaurants. One thing that I think needs to be looked at, restaurants were the most noticeably first hit businesses, but obviously retail has been affected in much the same way, storefront retail. And I think that collectively we need to be looking at options for making safe retail that may also include outdoors.
Mhm.
Yeah, Carrie, the one thing that I will say is what we're hearing from companies is there's going to be a lot of changes, frankly. Whether it be inside companies or just how we do business in general. I mean, from the office perspective, I mean, the square footage ratio that we can fit into an office building. Obviously, that is something that we are continuing to talk a little bit about, because obviously the spatial distancing and that sort of thing, but also the manufacturing. Been talking to a lot with Georgia Tech and everything that is along the lean manufacturing. I mean, this has changed the way that we are going to do business, and it is going to change the way that we are going to grow as a community in general. So I mean, there's a lot of changes, and I know we can talk about we can have conversations about this for a long time, but I know that we are bumping up against time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think this will be an ongoing conversation. But I do thank everyone for attending the webinar. And if you have any further questions for our panelists, as you can see, their contact information is on this slide. You'll receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. I do want to thank very much Chris, Andrew, and Angela for their time. I know during this time, everyone's time is very precious. So on behalf of the Atlanta Regional Commission and our presenters, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.